Hi, and welcome to today's podcast episode. I'm having a great conversation today about a topic that I'm personally really interested in and know that it's something which can help so many people. We're talking about the power of pausing and breathing to help regulate your nervous system. So I have a great guest joining me today, Helen Kelynack. Sorry, I
Yeah,
nearly said that wrong.
yeah.
Who's here from Sonora's sister, which is the most beautiful name, and she'll share with us the name that she chose for her business. Helen has been an NHS nurse, amongst other roles, for many years, and now works with women using hypnotherapy, breathwork, yoga, mindfulness techniques to help them to understand the power of pausing and listening to your body. So I'm really excited to chat about this with you today, Helen. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And some of you might recognise Helen because she was part of the little women's group that I had for World Menopause Day when we spoke all things menopause. So it's lovely to have Helen join again for this episode, focusing on what she works and is really passionate about herself. So just to get us started and find out a little bit more about you, I'd like to know what your most impactful healthy habit is in your toolkit.
So I think for me, it is the breath, it's breathing. And that's kind of why I got into breath work, because I was finding that, when I was having anxiety, particularly in my mid 40s, I was just having these palpitations and these kind of like what I thought was like chest pains and not being able to catch my breath. So I think that's been the most impactful on me, is being able to take that moment to pause and to take a breath, to just tune in and start to have an awareness of my own body. And I think that's where that started, of actually, help me. And then I was thinking, actually, I can help the women I already see to help them as well as hypnotherapy. So I think the breath work is probably the most key thing that I use in my toolkit now.
And this brings us nicely into the conversation that I want to have with you about breathing and the importance of being aware of your breath, because you mentioned, before you reached this point in your mid 40s where you were personally feeling anxious and having palpitations, breath work wasn't a practice that you had and probably even thought about. What was it like before that point? Did you ever give a thought to how you were breathing?
No, I hadn't really thought that actually maybe I could influence how I feel and how I show up in my day by my own breath. I hadn't realised that. And it wasn't until I really felt that I wasn't breathing right that actually I need to do something about this. And then I started to, I was already doing sort of self-hypnosis to relax and had lots of tools. But actually, it was that real key point in that kind of perimenopause phase that I'm still in, that I was like, some of these things weren't working for me anymore. They might have worked before and they're not working now. So I needed to change up what I was doing, because, as we grow and change, we know that, don't we? That actually sometimes we do need to change what's in our toolkit. And the breath was the most thing that I felt the shift in my body. I've always gone out walking, always done exercise, and that's really, really helped me. But I was still getting these palpitations. And I think that was the one key thing that really helped me get on top of those palpitations, was the breathing. All the other things like getting outside, moving my body, eating well, all helped. But I really needed to get control of these sort of palpitations that were happening. And I was just getting them just driving along, going to, I remember one particular time I was driving along to a friend's house to give her a gift. Nothing stressful, nothing that was causing me anxiety. But I had to pull over, and I've never had to do that before. I had to pull over because I really felt like I had no air in the car. The wind, I wound down the window. It just felt like it wasn't enough. I needed to stop the car and actually get out. And it was that point where I was like, I really, really am not breathing right here, and I don't know what to do about it. And that's when I started to research a little bit and start going to sort of online classes myself, I was just curious about it, and actually, could this help me? And then when it started to become a little bit more consistent, that's when I was like, oh, I'm really loving this, and I really want to be able to help other people, get control of that breath as well.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm so interested in this topic and tool to use for your wellness is that I started to have anxiety attacks, panic attacks when I was 19, really quite severe ones. And they've always been a part of who I am ever since then. And the only help really I ever got, and it was very pitiful help, was to use a paper bag and to breathe in and out of it. And I used to carry a paper bag with me wherever I could for goodness knows how many years. You know, I'd obviously have to get a new paper bag because once you'd breathed into it, it was no use. But the power of breathing, of focusing on your breath, and that was a very old-fashioned thing to
Yeah.
do. You know, it was about releasing the carbon dioxide out of your body that was adding to the panic. But breathing became something that for me, excuse me, I've got a terrible cough at the moment.
Mm.
Breathing for me became something that was almost a lifesaver. And then as
Yeah.
I've got into this space, I've learned a lot more about the real power of breath work. And I do really enjoy the more um, breathing type of meditations. They really help me. I love that focus. And my daughter, who's nearly 16, laughs because whenever there's anything slightly off with her or that she mentions, I'll say, just take a breath, deep breath. And she's like, you and this breathing. But, you know, there's a lot of talk about it because of how much we've realised it plays in our well-being, especially when it comes to stress and our nervous system. And I've heard people talk about how we've evolved as humans to have forgotten how to breathe properly.
Mhm.
Like, what do they mean when they say that?
Well, if you think, like babies, they breathe in that really optimal way. And I think, through stuff that happens in our environment and how we grow up and, traumas and stresses that happen, we kind of unlearn that way to breathe, where we breathe in a balanced, really like coherent way, like babies do. And quite often we don't breathe in through our nose and out through our nose. We're taking shorter, shallower breaths, where we're using our mouth quite a lot of the time. So you probably might have seen, it's quite popular now, a lot of celebrities are doing it, where they're taping their mouths up when they go to sleep, because it's such an amazing way to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, because we've got this incredible filter which filters out, the toxins and everything. So it's really good for us to be generally breathing in through our nose and out through our nose. And, when we watch a baby breathe and when they're sleeping, this lovely flow, rhythmical way that they breathe. But then as we've evolved and as we've gone on, traumas and stress and everything causes us to breathe from our chest. And when we breathe from our chest, it actually causes more anxiety. So, there are techniques that you can do to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. But if we can breathe optimally throughout our day, checking in and an awareness of our own breath, to just take a few rounds in through the nose and out through the nose, breathing down into the diaphragm. And that's what's really important. And that's what we call that optimal breath, is that we're breathing down into our tummy on that inhale, and that we're not breathing from the chest or using all our muscles. You might find that, especially when we're anxious or we're panicked, we can use these muscles and we're bringing our shoulders up to our ears. So you want to be able to, bring your shoulders down, lengthening your spine, opening your chest, and breathing down into the diaphragm. And that, I guess that's what they mean by that, is actually from babies. We need to go back to how we breathed when we were babies, compared to perhaps how we breathe now in such a stressful, busy digital lifestyle that we have now.
Yeah, and that has a huge part to play, doesn't it, in how we feel and the
Yeah.
way we've evolved to breathe, because so much of the way, certainly in Western and more developed cultures, how we live, it's such a fast pace, isn't it? And we put a lot
Yeah.
of pressure on ourselves. And, we get lost in the busyness of life and often
Me too.
don't even know that we're stressed and that we're in that fight or flight mode. And, they say, I've heard several leading doctors and scientists talk about the challenges we have with health now, especially around, all of the inflammatory diseases and illnesses that we're seeing on the rise. a lot of that is also being linked to our breath and the stress that we're creating in our body because of the way that we are breathing and being stuck in that fight or flight mode. And you've talked before about how often you would see this in patients when you were working in the NHS, and obviously now you have people coming to you because they know they feel like that. So, how does that show up for people? What is it that they're feeling and struggling with?
Well, I definitely saw, as being a nurse and a district nurse and a practice nurse, that, you know, that that's the stress levels that people were under, whether that is mums or whether that is people who have just got, a busy job, they were coming in for multiple blood tests and lots of, ailments or feeling in certain ways, but never really getting to the bottom of what it is. But really underlying all of that was stress, that high cortisol level. And actually, a lot of people don't identify as being stressed because we get so used to living in high stress that it becomes normal. So our bodies and our nervous system kind of adjust to live with that like really high kind of end stress. And that's normal. And our bodies get used to living in that way, that actually it's really not good for our bodies. And this is where we see a lot of burnout, because we can keep going at a certain stress level. There is good stress. We do need a little bit of stress in that way, that it kind of gets us to do a deadline, finishing something. We might push ourselves slightly out of our comfort zone, and that's what we call that like good stress. But if we're living in that constant state of stress, where we've got that high cortisol and that high adrenaline, the body kind of adjusts itself for a bit, and we live at that high level. So we quite often, you might have even seen it with people before, where they're busy, they're pushing, we're trying to be successful and all of those things. And then we have a holiday or we take a break, and people crash and burn and actually get really unwell. And it's like, oh, why is it when I'm always on holiday? It's because you've been living at this and we can't sustain living at that. So the moment you start to relax or step away, the body's like, oh, and you get poorly, you get run down, you might get, tonsillitis, or you might actually feel totally mentally and emotionally burnt out. And that quite often happens with people, is that they push and we keep going. And then when they rest, they can't enjoy being rested because they're actually poorly. And that's what I was seeing a lot of the time with people who were coming in for blood tests and things like that, is they were just keeping going. And then all of a sudden they would just crash and burn and be really unwell, and not being able to find actually what was wrong with them. And when you start to talk to people about their lifestyle and what stress is, they're suddenly like, oh, actually, maybe I'm really stressed. But it's quite hard to identify as being stressed if you're so used to living at that for long periods of time, because it becomes normal.
Yeah, I can completely associate with that from a personal perspective, but also from people I've spoke to. Who recently did just have someone on the podcast who was a deputy head teacher, and she spoke about how she didn't feel she was stressed. She just thought, well, this is how life's meant to be. And again, back to, how we've developed as a society and culture to be on the go all of the time. It leads you to think that the route to success and happiness is to just go and do and give. But we're not yet at that point in our evolutionary process as humans. We haven't progressed, the same way that we have in terms of our way of life. And I was like that. I used to take a holiday from work and always get tonsillitis. I know I've got a bit of a cold now. It's been going around and we've all had it in the house. But yeah, that was me. I would go on holiday and I would usually end up with a really severe kind of flu or tonsillitis, not just a cold. And I knew that it was, I'd put that link together, but so many people don't. And it's often as well because you've learned not to be able to switch off and relax. And so when you step away from it, you don't know what to do. It's like, and I'm in this, box as well. When you try to meditate, your mind's just going, and people say, but I just can't. I need to be on the go, because we've forgotten how to just pause. So the breath work is one massive, way of regulating your nervous system, of helping you to be more resistant and build resilience towards stressful situations. But it's about the power of pausing, isn't it? Taking that time to learn how to deregulate. So talk a little bit then about like the nervous system, because it might not be something that somebody listening has really heard much about.
So if you like, you can think of the nervous system a bit like a remote control to our body. It's sending all of these signals around. And actually, when we've had stress or trauma or whatever, it's our nervous system that takes in that information, and then it will send signals to the brain to release then that cortisol and adrenaline. So really, and there is a book that's called The Body Keeps the Score. And actually our body is the one that keeps the score. And we go so far away from ourselves in this world that we live in at the moment. We're not really tuning in and listening, and our nervous system is sending signals. And this is where we don't really listen until we get the palpitations or the panic attacks. And it's like an internal alarm system, if you like. The nervous system will give you little whispers, little alarms that things are unsafe or that it's seeing something as a threat. And that feeling, and it can even be just like an email. You might get an email that causes that stress, and we get that big surge of adrenaline because it might have been triggered by something that's stored in the nervous system. So that, the nervous system stores those kind of unprocessed emotions and feelings. And as a society, we like push it down, like just get through, ignore those kind of signs that we're not feeling good. And it gets stored and it gets stuck in the nervous system. So we really, with the breath, are tuning into our nervous system and we're listening. We're coming back home to ourselves. And that is that power of pause, because the breath allows us to come out of our head and into our body. Because when we start to focus on our breath and our body, the mind chatter starts to shut down. We shut down that sort of primitive part of our brain that allows us all that negative thinking and takes us to the, far to the future, or maybe perhaps too far into the past. It brings us to the present moment. So our nervous system sending these signals all around our body. And we've got this nerve, the vagus nerve, that goes right the way down from the bottom of our skull all the way down, and it branches off to the nervous system. And we can use the breath to stimulate that vagus nerve. And when we stimulate the vagus nerve, it sends signals to the nervous system to go into that parasympathetic state. So we've got these branches of the nervous system, and we've got the sympathetic and we've got the parasympathetic. And we need to be able to smoothly go into those throughout our day. We're never going to get rid of stress. Like, we're going to be at times having that sympathetic branch switched on, and we need to do that. But what we want to be doing is being able to perhaps go into that fight flight, go into that sympathetic branch, but then be able to naturally come back down to that parasympathetic, that rest and digest. But as we said, the life that we lead doesn't give us time to rest or come back to that parasympathetic branch. So we can do that through the breath, of being able to bring ourselves down into a calmer state and working with the nervous system to regulate it. And what we mean by that is so that it's not dysregulated, where we're shifting from that fight flight to that calm, to also that freeze fawn state that we have as well, which is that low, disconnected, disassociated. And fight flight is that high anxiety, that real hypervigilant, when we're perhaps overthinking. And when our nervous system is regulated, which we can do through the breath, we can easily move through these states and coming back to that rest and digest. But when our nervous system, when we're stuck, or we're stuck in a certain state, like that fight flight, that's when it's not regulated. Because as soon as we start to come into a rest, it will bounce back to that fight flight, or it will bounce back to that freeze, that disassociation, because we're so used to staying in that state for long periods of time. That's what we call where it's that vagus nerve doesn't have tone. it, and we can use the breath to kind of put the brake on a little bit in that calm state, so that the nervous system gets a break. It gets that break to be in that rest and digest. So that's kind of how the nervous system works, without going into it for too long.
Oh, that was a great explanation. And I think it helps people to visualize it as well, the way you talk through it there. And for me, I know I spent years really being stuck in that fight or flight place. And although I didn't know what I know now, I knew that it wasn't healthy. And I worried about the effect of, I think more because I could physically feel it, the speed at which the adrenaline would rush through my body and my heart would
Oh, yeah.
start racing and the sweaty palms and
Oh,
shaking
yeah.
physically. Like the response was so quick and it was so intense that I knew there was something physically happening that couldn't be good. And I think, I'm going to give myself a heart attack one day because this is so extreme. And it's something that I'm continuing to work on. Health full stop has no finish line. We're always
No.
moving forward and taking care of ourselves with the habits. We don't do it and then stop, which a lot of people still think is the case. You go on a diet for a few weeks or months and then that's it, job done, go back to normal. But I'm definitely work in progress with this, because I know from how I have been for so much of my adult life that I need to be able to better manage stress, and I need to learn how to regulate my nervous system. And so I have done a lot of work on this. As I say, it's still work in progress. I'm still trying to really embed a daily habit. I'm still a bit sporadic. So, someone's probably listened to this who hasn't even begun to implement this and make it a habit for them. What advice would you give to get started? And, because there's so many different ways you can practice breathing and breath work. Is there a one that you think helps when you're a beginner, and to really, tune in with yourself and how you breathe?
Yeah. And I think the best place to start, first of all, is an awareness, is to just have an awareness of your own breath, because we all breathe in different ways, we're all unique. So being able to get to know yourself again also brings you back into the body. So whether you're sitting or whether you're lying, just having a few moments to check in with yourself. Just check your own breath. Where can you feel it coming in? Can you feel the air coming in through your nose? Perhaps you might notice any niggles or tension in your body. So it's just observing, just being that observer, really, just noticing to begin with. And then you want to build on what we call that optimal breath. If we can breathe optimally throughout our day, it's going to still make a difference. Before, overcomplicating it and layering it up with lots of different techniques, start with awareness, start with an optimal breath. And an optimal breath is breathing in through the nose and out through the nose and sending it down to the tummy, down to the belly, in that diaphragm, because we want to be, when we breathe in that way, we're pushing that diaphragm. The diaphragm moves down and it's just making more space. So on the inhale, if you're a person that likes visual stuff like me, you can imagine a balloon in your tummy. And we want to be filling that balloon 360 degrees. So the front, the sides, the back on that inhale. So breathing in, and we're moving it down into the tummy, just expanding. You want to be able to feel that expansion in your ribs, allowing your shoulders to come down, lengthening your spine. And just start with a few rounds of that, checking in, awareness, and then a little bit more breath with intention, moving it down. And just do that, just a few rounds of that to begin with. And then you can start to add in other techniques. But a really good technique that you can then do once you've got that optimal breath is calm breathing. So the important thing with the calm breathing is the outer breath is double the in-breath. So this is a really good go-to one. Like I think there's a breathwork practitioner, he's called Stuart, Sandman, and he talks about, that if in doubt, breathe it out. So if you're in doubt and you're thinking, oh, I don't know what technique to use, breathe it out. It's a longer out breath, needs to be double the in breath. So it's a really good one to remember. So whether you're breathing in for 4 through the nose, you want to be breathing out through pursed lips through the mouth. for 8. So whether you breathe in for 4, you want to be breathing out for 8. If you breathe in for 3, you want to breathe out for 6. So, and everybody's different. You know, sometimes people struggle with 4 and 8 because it's quite a long out breath, but you can build that up. You know, you can even do 2 and 4, 3 and 6, and build it up. So if you're ever in doubt and you're not sure, just a really longer out breath, you know, and just a couple of really good in through the nose and sighing it out. Just a couple of those where you just breathe in through your nose and you're sighing it out and you're making a sigh noise, because when we use a sigh...
Can I just ask Helen, sorry,
Yeah.
why do we breathe out through the mouth in this example you're giving rather than through the nose?
You know, because if you're just breathing generally in through the nose and out through the nose, it's a really good consistent one. But breathing out through the mouth for double stimulates the vagus nerve that we talked about earlier, that sends those signals to the nervous system. So the double of the out breath through pursed lips is a really good way to stimulate that vagus nerve. So, and again, like I said, you know, the double the count really works with that. So that's what you can be doing. So starting with just an awareness, then just in through the nose, out through the nose, down into the tummy. And then any in-breath you do, any technique, you want to be sending it down to the tummy. That is the really important part, because we're moving the diaphragm, which is creating that space. We're going to get that really good gaseous exchange. And so, yeah, there are lots and lots of techniques that you can do. But as a baseline to start with, you don't want to overcomplicate it. The most important thing is it's down into the tummy and be consistent. You know, we know that, like with the gym or anything like that, the more we do it regularly, the more we start to see a shift in how we feel. So even if it isn't every day, a couple of times a week, just checking in, whether it's first thing in the morning, which is a really good one to do because it sets you up for the day. Just take a minute. Doesn't even need to be 5, 10 minutes. Just a minute of breathing in through the nose, out through the nose, into the tummy, or calm breathing will just bring you down to that parasympathetic state, that nerve, that branch of the nervous system that is that rest and digest. Because, even as like busy mums, I've got 8-year-old twins, so sometimes mornings can be a little bit chaotic, but it's about tweaking, isn't it? Our habits, like we talked about that. So I was, when I was in that high anxiety state, I was waking up with dread for the day. Like I just couldn't, I know it was perimenopause and it still is that perimenopause, but that feeling of dread where I was like, I can't face the day. I can't do this. So I started to like, okay, why do I dread it so much? Why is it so chaotic? I'm leaving things to the last minute. Everything was just disorganized. So just by tweaking a few things in my morning routine has made a massive difference. And one of those is being able to just get up that little bit earlier. Like it's hard. Like, you want to keep hitting snooze, but you got to just think, okay, what works for me? It might not work for someone else, and it's not that I'm not, I don't get up and spring out of bed, but just getting up that little bit earlier gives me that chance to just check in with my breath, have an awareness, where am I feeling it? Do I have any tension this morning? And it brings me back out of the worrying about all the things that I've got to do, but also it stops me going on my phone, because that was another thing that I was doing was as soon as I'd wake up, even like bleary eyed, I'd reach my phone and I'd be straight on Instagram. Like I hold my hands up, like I was that person. But now I'm just like, it's not doing me any good, because all of, right from the moment of opening my eyes, I was like, oh my God, all these people are doing amazing things. So there was comparison straight away. There was also this sudden need that I've got to do lots more things. And I would just, we just are consuming other people's stuff. And we're only getting snippets of that, aren't we, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. So it's like, what can I replace it with? So I put on a breathwork audio, or I put on a meditation that's got breathwork in it. And it might only be 4 minutes for me now. 4 minutes of uninterrupted time. I could still do sitting in my bed, because I would easily be on Instagram for 20 minutes and then it'd be, oh my God, I've got to get up. Like the kids are getting up, and then I'd be like, oh, I'd be in like, it's not a nice, foot to start the day on, is it? So, starting with that the right way for me is just a couple of minutes of checking in with my breath. So, if people, have not done it before, that's a really good time. If you are that person that thinks, I really could change how I feel in the morning, it's the best time to do it. Or even if the weather's not great now, but if you step outside in your garden, with your cup of tea or whatever, just take a few of those deep breaths down into the tummy. Will set the day. So the morning for me makes a massive difference with habit changes anyway. I don't know about you, but we don't have to do massive changes, but just a slight tweak really makes a difference.
100%. I agree with that. And the great thing with everything you've said there is it's free. It's very easy to do. It may be difficult to embed as a habit, but if you know that you want to feel better and you don't want to continue feeling as stressed as you do, you don't want to reach a place where you are burnt out. Many women in midlife, as you mentioned with perimenopause, are also feeling the impact of those hormone fluctuations and can be a lot more responsive than maybe what they would have been to things in the past. And you don't like that. And so this is a great way at no cost. You don't have to pay anything to get your hands on some of these really short meditation or breathwork practices. You don't have to carve out a great big chunk of time. You don't need any skill to do it. This is what we're meant to do as humans. We've just forgotten the importance of breathing in the right way. And building it in maybe when you have a shower, even if you're sitting on the toilet, use that time to just breathe. And I think that's been one of the big things for me that I've tried to do, is regularly bring this in. Even if I'm in the car driving, obviously you need to be aware still, but just taking those really cleansing breaths in and out through my nose, long breaths, and just, doing it whenever you can, even if it's while you're chopping the veg for tea or, so on. There's just so many opportunities in your day. It's about finding those and trying to then make that a habit at that same point every day, so that it just becomes a part of who you are. And one of the things you touched on was getting outside in the morning as well. And I'm totally for that. And I know you're a big walker. You like to just get the daylight into your eyes as soon as you can. And that swap of the phone light to the real daylight is very powerful. I was a Daily Mail user for many, many years. Like you say, before I was even fully conscious, that was how I woke myself up, by going onto the news app. Same on a night. And I gave that up almost a year ago. I think it was last November. Stopped that, and I've felt a huge difference in that, because it's not just the impact of what you're seeing on social media that plays out in a negative way for you, but it's also the fact that you aren't getting into the present with yourself when you wake up in the morning. You're allowing your day and your mind to be railroaded by whatever you see in social media or the news or so on, isn't it? So, taking even just a really short space of few minutes, and I have a morning routine that I share with my clients and talk about, of movement, mindfulness and mindset. And I say, even if they're just a minute each, even if the mindset is in bed, just saying in your mind what it is you want to feel like that day, or what one thing do you want to end the day knowing you're really grateful for or that you've achieved. The mindfulness could be just, like you say, checking in, how am I feeling? Just literally a few deep breaths. And then movement, even if you just get up and start making the bed straight away, or ideally move a little bit more. But it doesn't have to be minutes of each. It could just be those seconds or a minute. And there are opportunities while you brush your teeth, take a shower, use the toilet, make the bed, to incorporate and stack the habits into ones you already have. Absolutely. So you love to get outside. I know it's a big part of what you practice. So that, the power in that is enormous, isn't it, to have fresh air? And Helen lives in Cornwall, so we do have some nice countryside in the northeast where I live, but you've got amazing beaches and countryside. And do you find that's been a big help for you as well?
Oh, definitely. And if I think, over lockdown, we were so lucky, where we live, that we can, be by the sea, or, I've got a beautiful stream that's kind of just down from my house. So, creating those habits of getting outside. And like you said, you don't have to go for, an hour's walk, but, just 10 minutes is enough to give you that real boost. And like we said, creating little rituals for ourselves, little habits for ourselves, and I'm doing more and more of that now in my mid-40s, because it starts to get you to be in tune with yourself. And, when we're mums and we're working, we're so busy giving everything, aren't we? And sometimes we never have enough of ourselves left. But to just create little habits or little things that you love, doesn't have to be going to a spa, it doesn't have to be all of those things, but checking in with yourself and your breath. Like you said, asking yourself, so I try and ask myself now, how do I want to show up today? Like, what do I want to show up as today? Or I feel confident because perhaps I'm doing this. Perhaps I just want to, just be relaxed, whatever my day is. Asking yourself that. And also asking yourself, what is helpful to me today? Like, what is helpful to me today? And I say this to all my clients when we start to have our minds that go to the week ahead or, too far away from ourselves. Just come home to yourself by asking, what's helpful to me today? Do I need to go and call that friend? Do I feel a little bit stuck with my energy? Do I need to go on for a nice windy walk? Like, what is helpful to me today? Is such a really powerful question, because it makes you really think, is actually, how am I feeling? Do I feel I need to connect with someone? Do I need to curl up with a blanket and a book? When you ask yourselves those, you really start to come home to yourself, because as we've said, in the life that we lead now, we just are so far away from ourselves. We're constantly looking for external things to make us feel better. And actually, the power of pause is all within you. Your breath, your mindset, the movement, your body, it's all there, but we're constantly seeking elsewhere. And actually, when you start to come home to yourself and live a little bit more authentically and listen to your true intuition and what your body and your mind needs, it really changes how you feel about yourself. Your whole well-being starts to change. And that's what's so good about the breath, because it helps your well-being, your mental well-being, spiritual well-being, emotional and physical. The breath does all of those things, all in different ways. It helps with, performance. It helps you breathe better when you're running. It helps you, all of that kind of like performance end, but also in that end to just live a little bit more of a like mindful life. And I think we all need that. I think actually, success looks different for everybody, doesn't it? And well-being looks different for everybody. But if you can start to come back to yourself with your breath and your mindset, and that's what's really great about what I do, that I can work with a breath for the body, but also I can work with hypnosis with the subconscious mind, and the two work really well together. So getting women to see that actually we can calm down that mind chatter, we can stop negatively forecasting the future and getting stuck in the past with our mindset, but we can also physically calm our body down with the breath at the same time. So, I think this is why I'm getting more and more women coming to work with me, because the two work so well together, that we can get you to start thinking a little bit more positively and a bit more hopefully. And when women start to have a bit more of a hope-filled perspective on their life, they want to start to make more changes. And I'm definitely seeing more and more women like mid-40s plus now just going, I just don't want to feel like this anymore. Like I've lost myself. I don't know how I feel. And if we can get people to start to come back to themselves, we're going to feel more happier. We're going to feel more joy and peace and love and gratitude in our life.
Oh, I love that. And what you do at Sonara's Sister is the hypnotherapy, as you said, to really help with the shifts and change that many people want to make but feel is too difficult, too far from reach, the way our lives are, the stories we've told ourselves about, well, this is just how I am. Hypnotherapy is so powerful at being able to tap into those subconscious beliefs and limiting beliefs and stories that we've embedded and have become our reality. And then you marry that up with yoga, don't you, and the breath work and
The
helping
breath
people to
work,
have
yeah,
this
it works
whole
so well
mindful
together.
approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me then, Sonara's sister, the story, because that links into Cornwall, where you live, and it's just such a beautiful name for the company that you founded and helping so many women through.
Yeah, so Sonara is a mythical mermaid that's in a certain part in Cornwall in Sennen. And the Sonara name kind of represents that kind of female energy. And also because I live so close to the sea, and the sea is really big part of my life. That's why I wanted something that was sort of ocean inspired. So Sonara is that that mermaid, that amazing mermaid. And the sister part kind of represents that being like a sister. And lots of people say that, that, oh, it's like having a big sister when I work with you, or, so we kind of incorporated the two together, it kind of representing sisterhood, the ocean being that kind of where we can, dive down deep sometimes with ourselves, but rise to the surface, calmer, more relaxed. So it's like deep diving and then sort of rising up, a lighter, calmer. So that's kind of what Sonara Sister represents, really.
Oh, it's such a beautiful name. And hopefully you can hear in Helen's voice how calming she is. And I can imagine when you do hypnotherapy or even just the breath work and yoga sessions, that your voice is something that really helps other people to
Yeah.
take that time and space to be more mindful. And so I know you run lots of different things in person where you live. I wish that I lived closer, because you've ran some amazing retreats and you do lovely sessions on an evening, don't you? And is that a
Yeah.
big part of what you want to move forward with to help women?
Yeah, I think just creating that really nice sacred space for women to come, and we leave all our troubles and our woes at the door, we shut the door, the candles are lit, we've got essential oils, and it is that nice space where you can just let go and just surrender to the relaxation, because at home we do get lots of distractions, don't we? And it's just such a nice time for women to come together. And the bit that I love as well is that when we're drinking herbal tea and we're all chatting, and women that perhaps have never met before are chatting and, sharing what they do, and then be like, oh, I need to come and see you for that. And it's just really, really great to have that buzz of women all feeling that we're in the same place, but at different points of the journey, but all coming together and sharing a little bit of wisdom, of, oh yeah, I felt like that and this has helped me, and, all of those things. And I love all of that. I love that kind of feeling that we've all come together. It's really nice. And that is what kind of Sonara Sister is. It's that sisterhood where we can just be ourselves with each other. So yeah, the in-person things are something that perhaps, I'm going to do more of.
I love that as well. When I've been face to face with women in groups like that, it's so empowering, isn't it? There's just so
Yeah,
much that women want to share. And I think it's something that's really important for where we are right now in this change of the menopause journey that we're seeing, the awareness we're building around it, that the acceptance, the support that has been so needed for so long. We're at a
yeah,
turning point where women need to be heard. We've
yeah,
struggled to share how we really feel for so long, and many women are still in that place. But for
yeah,
those who've found communities or groups or people like us and listening to podcasts like this, it's really helped to give people that much needed ear. People just want to
yeah,
share what they've struggled with, and I think that's something which is so beautiful and at the same time really empowering, because when we start sharing like that and know we can support on our sisters, it
yeah.
lifts all of us up, doesn't it? And it really helps people to
Does.
start to move forward, because that's what you and I are about. We want people
Yeah,
to move forward, to live great lives, to feel
yeah,
happy, to have what they would deem a successful life. And that's whatever it looks like for you. But you need to be strong to be able to achieve all of those things.
mm,
And taking care of yourself is is, I think, how you get to that place of true happiness
Yeah.
and fulfillment. And so, I think you've given a lot of really great steps there to get started. Is there anything that you can offer to help people, if they think, oh, I don't know how I'm going to breathe like that or remember to do it? I know you have a lot of free tools that people can tap
Yeah.
into to get started,
Yeah.
can't they?
So yeah, I'm actually launching tonight a little freebie that I've got,
Mhm.
which is a little breathwork technique, which helps to bring you down from that fight flight. People might have heard of it, but box breathing is a really good one to kind of ground yourself and connect yourself. So,
Yeah.
if people are wondering, okay, like what does it sound like? I've recorded an audio so people can download that and have it. And I'm also going to be launching a breathwork bundle, a digital toolkit of different types of breathwork. That's going to be coming out soon as well, to look out for that. But at the moment, tonight I'm going to be releasing my little free audio. So, people can go and click on that on my Instagram or whatever. But, always just start with that awareness. That's the first step, is to just tune into yourself and your own breath.
Yeah. And I'll pop the link to that free breathing exercise in the show notes as well. And I'm a huge fan of the box breathing. I think it's the easiest one for people to do. And the
Yeah.
great thing about it, and I have actually used this for many years because of my anxiety, is the box breathing is 4 in, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. And those counts of 4 focus your mind, and
It does.
that,
Yeah.
along with the breathing, helps to
Yeah.
deregulate your nervous system, or
Yeah.
regulate it. So it's really great from a focus, and it's the one that they say the SES SEALs, Navy
Yeah. The
SEALs
SEALs
use as well,
use.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can
Yeah.
imagine the adrenaline that's, rushing through them in some of the
Absolutely. Yeah.
situations they have to go to work
Yeah.
in. So yeah, that's a brilliant offer for people
Yeah.
to take up
And
and
it's a
get
good one,
started with.
like with the visual as well, like a box or a square, because you
Yeah,
can visualize it in your mind as you're breathing in that way.
exactly.
So yeah, I'll give you the
Hmm.
link to that, because it is being launched
Brilliant.
tonight. So yeah, like you said, box breathing, it is really good for bringing that focus back to the count, and also the shape of the box or
Hmm.
square. It just gives you something to follow.
Yeah, I think it helps to make it easier as well, because it can be very strange to start
Yeah,
this
it
kind
can.
of,
Yeah,
breathwork practice. And there's lots of great guided ones out there. Some I've tried that I
yeah.
haven't enjoyed. I like Breathe with James.
Oh,
Have
okay.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
yeah,
got a lovely voice, and
yeah.
I'm a subscriber to the Deliciously Ella app, and he does some
Yes,
of the
he's on there. Yeah,
mindfulness and breathing practices on there, and I like his voice. But then I've tried other people, and I think, no, I don't like
yeah.
that. So find what works for you as well,
That's it.
or just do it
Yeah,
alone. It's about finding the right fit for you. So
absolutely.
you're on Instagram.
Yeah,
Obviously, I'll pop everything into the show notes. So where can
yeah,
people find you if they do want
yeah,
to
yeah,
connect and
sure.
find out more?
Oh, thank you so much for having
You're
me.
welcome. Yeah. Just so Helen, on Instagram, it's Sonara's sister,
Sonara's_sister. So yeah,
sister.
Sonara's sister,
Yeah.
and it will come up. Yeah,
And you've got a website and Facebook as well, so you can
that's
connect with
right. Yeah,
Helen and
yeah,
yeah, check her out. And if you are struggling with anything, specific to what we've talked about today, like anxiety, depression, just that nervous feeling, and as we know, a lot of women perimenopausal age can start to get things like this for the first time, and palpitations. Helen is really good at this with hypnotherapy. I know we've chatted about the struggles that I've started to have with driving, and it's very common for
yeah.
perimenopausal
Very
age
common.
women to develop a fear of driving, or other
Yeah,
types of fears where you're enclosed in, and so on. And so I know she's done a lot of work with women in the hypnosis type of practices to help
mm,
women be able to remove some of those fears, and
yeah.
be able to feel confident when they're behind the wheel. So yeah, definitely reach out to Helen. So thank you so much for your time and expertise, and sharing a lot of
Mhm.
inspiration today.
Thank you for having me.